Welcome back to the Brahmin Word. And yes, Esther has saved the Jews from Haman. However, that is not the end of the rescue plan because Haman's decree is still very active and moving. And so, with that being said, what does Esther do? So, turn to Esther chapter 8. Esther chapter 8, we definitely see more in this chapter just the genius of Esther and her and her relationship with Mordecai as well. So, Esther chapter 8 verse 1. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was to her. And the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So, a couple things here. Again, just irony. The fact that the same house where uh, the man that was plotting against Mordecai was living at is now Mordecai's house. The estate is his, the land is his. I mean, it is very very ironic. But then too, we see this job promotion, and we aren't really told what Mordecai did as a job um, before all this happened. And so really it's probably not even a promotion, it's just quite a transference of a position to Mordecai. So when he says he gives the signet ring that was Haman's to Mordecai, he's not just giving him a ring, but he's giving him the position that Haman had. And obviously, the fact that he is connected by relationally to Esther, to his queen, makes sense why he gets that job. But still, is a striking moment. So that is a very good first step. But the job is not done yet. Verse 3. Then Esther spoke again to the king. She fell at his feet and wept and pleaded with him to avert the evil plan of Haman the Agagite and the plot that he had devised against the Jews. So just because Haman is gone and out of the scene, out of the way, which is a good start, again, that doesn't mean that the decree is gone. Verse 4. When the king held out the golden scepter to Esther, Esther rose and stood before the king. And she said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and if the thing seems right before the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let an order be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the provinces of the king. For how can I bear to see the calamity that is coming to my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows, because he intended to lay hands on the Jews. But you may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring, for an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked. And that last part is why this has to happen, why they have to come up with either they have to come up with another a follow-up decree, is because once something is written in Persian Median culture, and in that time, once something is written by an authority, especially the king, then that is done. There is nothing that can revoke that. However, you can certainly add on things after that that appear to go against it, but again, you can't revoke it. And so the plan of Haman is still very much on, but what Esther is, or what the king is hinting at, because he is the one that really comes up with this idea, but then Esther uh, and Mordecai and the king all put into plan, is that you can do something to help out with that. And you really see that because of the care that Esther has for her people. In verse 6, these couple of questions: for how can I bear to see the calamity that's coming to my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? That fuels this suggestion that the king makes. And it's a very well done moment that Esther comes in and saves her people. Verse 9: the king's scribes were summoned at that time, in the third month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day. And an edict was written, according to all that Mordecai commanded concerning the Jews, to the satraps and the governors and the officials of the provinces, from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, to each province in its own script, and to each people in its own language, and also to the Jews in their script and their language. So this edict, just like the decree of Haman, is vast, but also is going to so many different people, so many different languages. This is not just a quick email and that's it. No, there's a lot of writing involved. There's a lot of paper involved, ink involved, uh, or they could have been using papyrus as well. So it is a labor of love to write this decree and to send it throughout the empire. Those 127 provinces, talking about India to Ethiopia, we're talking about the whole entire empire at that time. It's not just the city of Susa, which is where we have been for most of this walkthrough. It is a vast project, and it goes throughout the empire. Verse 10: and he wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus, and sealed it with the king's signet ring. Then he sent the letters by mounted couriers, riding on swift horses that were used in the king's service, bred from the royal stud, saying that the king allowed the Jews who were in every city to gather and defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed force of any people or province that might attack them, children and women included, and to plunder their goods on one day throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Dar. So the follow-up decree is basically giving them the right to defend themselves. That really is what it is. But then on top of that, it is to plunder their goods. Now, why put that in there? I think it is to make you go back to the Exodus, and when the people of Israel are leaving Egypt, they not only are freed from slavery, but they plunder the Egyptians as they leave. Now the Egyptians give those things willingly to the Israelites because they're sick and tired of all the plagues going on. They just want them gone. And I think here you see, as we'll see later on, once this actually takes place, next week we will dive into this. But you see that it's almost a willing, like they give it up willingly. The plundering of the goods. So yeah, because plundering of goods, it could give the connotation that they are stealing them by force. But then two, plundering goods could just be taking said goods. And we see that in Exodus. Yes, they took the goods, but the goods were given to them by the Egyptians willingly. Um, I think that is what is implied here. Uh, so, verse 13: a copy of what was written was to be issued as a decree in every province, being publicly displayed to all peoples, and the Jews were to be ready on that day to take vengeance on their enemies. So, again, this air of defense, of justice, is definitely shining through here. Verse 14. So the couriers, mounted on their swift horses that were used in the king's service, rode out hurriedly, urged by the king's command. The decree was issued in Susa, the citadel. Then Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal robes of blue and white, with a great golden crown and a robe of fine linen and purple. And the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. So, this, I think, is to show the reward uh, of not just Mordecai's stance to not give in to Haman, but also the courage and the bravery that is shown by Mordecai and Esther too. So to be given all of these things mentioned here, royal robes, a golden crown, a robe of fine linen and purple, those are incredibly honored and respected items, and you don't just give those to anybody. Um, and so it's interesting to see that. And then the city of Susa shouting and rejoicing by the look of basically a foreigner taking over this very uh, herald position. And also being honored and respected in this way is to show that the Jews are not a, how do I put it? They're not in a spot where you would expect a exiled people to be. They are seen to have some sort of level of honor and respect within the country where they were exiled to, and that again is not normal. So I think that is very interesting to say the least. And what's interesting is verse 16 and really the verse 17 too. So let's look at those as we end here. So the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, and in every province and in every city, wherever the king's command and his edict reached, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday. And many from the peoples of the country declared themselves Jews, for fear of the Jews had fallen on them. So, couple things here. First off, when you see in verse 16, the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, what does that mean exactly? What does it mean to have light? For me, I think it is very much a. It makes you think of the parables that Jesus taught in the Gospels, where he is saying that he is the light of the world, but that we are also supposed to be lights to the world as well. I think this is definitely meant to say this. Now, is this actually talking about having lights in their house? Well, first off, there is no light bulb at this point. But let's say like they didn't have candles or anything at that time. No, I don't think so. I think it is absolutely meant to show some sort of joy, um, some sort of godly influence or witness. I think that is what is being talked about here. So the Jews had godly witness and gladness and joy and honor. The reason why you see these things come up here, again, I think is to show that whenever this day comes, whenever this day comes that the Jews are attacked, people will actually be rooting for the Jewish people. And not only that, but you kind of see that in verse 17. And many from the peoples of the country declared themselves Jews. Again, this is not common for a country that has very much conquered another country to not just welcome in the exiles, but to honor and respect them to the point where a lot of themselves will join them. I mean, that is definitely not common. Uh, and so, for fear the Jews had fallen on them, are they actually scared that the Jews are going to take over their country, like Pharaoh was scared of the Jews back in the book of Exodus, the beginning of the book? I don't think so here. I think it's more or less they are in awe and in reverence of the Jews. Could it be that there is some sort of trembling fear here? Absolutely. But to be honest, I think this is a reverence for the people of Israel, seen in a exiled land, which is again not normal. So, with that being said, that sets up uh, this in this incredible final part of this rescue plan, and we will see that come to fruition next week. We will look at Esther chapter 9 and see how this final part of this rescue plan is executed and pulled off. Uh, but with that being said, thank you for spending a little bit of time here with me with Rodman Word. I will see you next week. Thanks.